Welcome to the Helping Humankind podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Kuhlman. I get the pleasure of hanging out with shameless do-gooders as they share their stories of helping humankind. We are shining a light on those who are making the world a better place, one act of kindness at a time. Today, we are shining a light on the amazing Will Akin. I'm so giddy. I am so giddy. It is ridiculous. I'm like bursting with energy. Just so you guys know, I texted Will at 7:30 this morning. I was like, I'm so excited about today. He's like, me too. So, Will, there's so many questions. There's so many things that we're going to talk about today. Tell us who you are and what you do. We'll start with the basics.
Yeah. So, Will Akin. I'm the sheriff of Clay County, Missouri. It's funny, I'm not from here. I share with everyone that I talk with that I've moved 38 times in 49 years, lived in 10 states and 3 countries. But my wife and I, with our family, moved here just over 12 years ago. Okay. And it was the best move personally and professionally that I've ever made. And Clay County, Missouri, Liberty, Missouri is our home.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so when did you move here? What year was that?
December 1st of 2012.
Okay, so I met you
just shortly after we moved here.
You guys had just moved here?
You literally are one of the handful of people that I met even before I started with the sheriff's office.
Are you serious? So Will and I used to work out at the same gym. His wife was there. Mm-hmm. And we did a 5:10. It was 5:10 in the morning.
Yeah.
It was the middle of the night.
Yep.
Like I would get up at 4:37 in the morning. Sometimes I would sleep in my workout clothes.
Oh my gosh.
And I would brush my teeth, pick up Julie. Yep. On my way to the gym, mm-hmm. And then Julie and I met you.
Yeah.
And I feel like our lives just keep crossing at certain points.
Even at the Denver airport.
Yes. And we are going to show a picture of that for those of you that are going to be watching. Literally, I'm in the Denver airport, and I look over, and I'm like, Will Akin? And we ended up sitting next to each other, flying home together. And yeah, it's just crazy.
So that was probably one of the shortest flights I've ever been on.
Oh my God, we talked.
We did.
We solved all the world problems.
We did.
We really did.
We're still working on implementation, but we're well on our way.
We are well on our way. That is so true. Okay, so part of why I love you so much is because you know that there's a time and a place to use what I would call hard skills. There's a time to, I hate to say that, use a gun. There's a time to use a gun. There's a time to do what we would call law enforcement. And there's also a time to use soft skills. And one of the reasons, like I said, that I really respect the work that you do is because you brought what I would call soft skills to Clay County in the sense of the CIT, Crisis Intervention Team. Is that right?
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about that work.
So CIT has been around for several years now, and we were trying to do it, before I became sheriff, we were trying to do it kind of like in little pockets, people who were already bought into it, and then other people who were like, I'm never going to that, and that kind of mentality. Yeah. But the very first CIT course that I attended was in 2005, and that was in Phoenix, Arizona. And I tell you, that was a game changer for me. I'd only been a cop for 2 years, but everything that I thought I knew about law enforcement had changed during that week of training. Later, just before I became sheriff, when I was running for sheriff, I was actually the co-chair of the Tri-County CIT Council for law enforcement. And it was in partnership with our mental health agency, now known as Beacon. And, we did a lot of things, but I realized that I had never gone through the CIT course that we were actually encouraging people to take. So I actually went through the course again, and that was in 2018. Yeah. So in 13 years, even though I've always been an advocate for mental health, for law enforcement and for our communities, but I learned so much again taking that course. Yeah. That it was just a solid reminder of why it is so important to use those soft skills rather than the hard skills. And now I'm sheriff, and I've placed a massive emphasis on, hey, look, the mantra is basically, if we can talk someone into handcuffs, let's do that. Mm-hmm. There's no need to go straight to the tool belt. Yeah. And so de-escalation is important, and really building that trust with the community. And it's been awesome because we actually have members of our community who will actually ask for deputies and law enforcement, if for officers to respond, deputies to respond, who have gone through CIT training. Because even the community recognizes that. So all I've done is just allow our employees to do what they want to do, and we have built up an amazing CIT team.
Yeah. My children, so my girls are 14 and 16, and there was a video that was circulating the internet at one point in terms of like where some law enforcement showed up. They did not respond appropriately, and at the end, the woman that they went to help, actually they ended up harming her, killing her.
Yeah.
And so the media obviously does a good job of portraying you guys as the bad guy. And that's something that I feel like you guys have to rebrand, reshift. You have to do all these things. And so I immediately said to my kids, I said, yes, that's unfortunate that happened. I said, but I want you to know that in Clay County, like I was proud. I'm going to get teary. Proud of you and what you've done. Because I said in our county, you can call and it's going to be okay. Like they're going to try to help you. And so I think that there is this element of where just us as the general public has to help demystify sort of what they think might happen if they call for help. And so I just want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to tell my kids that we are safe here, that people are here to actually help you.
It's an honor.
Oh, I love that. So speaking of help and law enforcement, when I met you, one of the first questions I asked was, what's the difference between the police and the sheriff's office?
Which is a great question. It is like probably my number one most common question asked. And to kind of summarize, the police department is a department of a city. And so take Liberty, Missouri, for example. I believe, and don't quote me on this, I think it's like 39 square miles. And they have their police department and they have to work within their jurisdiction, as with all municipalities. The sheriff's office has the entire county. Even though, so we have 263,000 roughly people that live in Clay County in a 409 square mile landmass. Okay, that's our jurisdiction. But for the county, our responsibility is the unincorporated area. And in reality, the unincorporated area is only 23,000 people. But because law enforcement and all the challenges that we have, and that could definitely be another episode, but all of us have to work together. So we're not just restricted to our unincorporated area. So we have to cover the entire county. And the biggest difference is the authorities and the responsibility that are granted to deputies as opposed to the officers. And we all do the same job. But a police chief is hired and has to answer to a city manager or a mayor, depending on the makeup of that municipality. A sheriff is elected by the people. And we have, the last time I checked, we have 178,001 registered voters in Clay County. So technically, I have over 178,000 bosses.
Yes.
And it's in statute I'm the chief law enforcement officer of the county, and that comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility. But by no means does that mean I'm better than a police chief. I mean, let's face it, all the police chiefs that work in Clay County, they're my friends. And we have to work with each other. We're always helping each other. We have coordinated groups that help each other. And so that's the biggest difference. But with a police chief, there are rules on how they have to be terminated and stuff like that. As a sheriff, if you don't like me, you can vote me right out every 4 years. So I have to worry about my job every 4 years.
Yes. Well, the blessing, he didn't have to worry about it this last time.
I am the first person in at least 68 years
I love this.
to run for the office of sheriff unopposed.
Woo!
That is huge.
So just to give a framework, and this is kind of raunchy, but everyone loves Will so much. Like, I feel like Will, if you put it on like Facebook, like, I farted today, you get 347 likes and everybody like, you're the best, Will! We love you so much! Like, that's honestly my perception of you. Like, how people see you. Like, you just
awesome.
can do no wrong. You're just out there helping people. You're always in the mix. Like, it's just, you have a really big following. And I think that has to feel amazing.
I think it's so another responsibility, unwritten responsibility for law enforcement leaders is to build that trust with the community. And over the last 6 years, I've been sending friend requests to people on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been a time or two where people say, I don't know you. Why are you sending me a friend request?
Mm-hmm.
And I just say either, hey, I'm running for sheriff, or I am the sheriff of Clay County. And I'm just trying to build my network to help build that trust in the job that I do. And, and I just, hey, look, I'm just sending you a friend request because I want you to know who your sheriff is.
Wow.
And they come back and they just say, wow, I'm accepting. Like, you sound really cool. Like, and so I have friends on Facebook that really, if I was just any other person and not being transparent or trying to be approachable, they'd have just been like, delete, ignore, or whatever it is on Facebook. I never not add people who send me friend requests.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Okay, so let me see here. Okay, so what are some actual services that the sheriff's office does? Does that make sense? Like, what do you guys do? That's a funny question.
That's another great question.
Yeah.
So the Clay County Sheriff's Office is one of the very few full-service sheriff's offices and I would say in the country. And what that means is, by statute, for our size county, I have 4 responsibilities. I have to staff a jail, run a jail.
Uh-huh.
I have to provide court security. I have to provide civil service. And I also have to provide patrol services on county roads. Okay. And then there's some other statutes in there that I have to be responsible for CCW, concealed carry permits, and sex offender registration and stuff like that. But we go beyond that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have investigations unit. We have the largest school resource deputy unit in the state.
Okay.
We have 17, and we're highly involved. I mean, we're always called upon to help other districts out and try to help the units, school resource units, to build them up, because we've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
And our relationship, not just with the school district that we're in, the North Kansas City School District, which phenomenal partnership.
Yeah.
I mean, there was an issue last week that came up, and I called their superintendent with no problems. We started talking about it, and that's just the kind of relationship we have. And so apart from that, I mean, we have a public relations unit, we have a drone unit, we have canine traffic. I mean, there's so many things that we have at the sheriff's office. And that's what drives people to the sheriff's office for employment, because there's so many different opportunities. Yeah. At a police department, you're really kind of stuck on one of 2 paths, depending on how long you're there. It's either patrol or investigations. Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah. And so, so we have right now I think we have 225 employees. And, and I might be a little biased in thinking this, but we're the best law enforcement agency in the KC metro area.
I 100% agree. I love it. Well, and I think getting back on the school resource officer, so it's called an SRO. And I do think that it helps you guys establish relationships and do that rebranding. And so the kids can go up to the SRO, ask them questions. It creates a connection. I always hear amazing stories of SROs around town in terms of how they're making those connections with kids.
I tell you, there's a lot of mixed emotions about having law enforcement in schools.
Yeah.
But I'll share a story with you. So one of our very first school resource deputies for Clay County in the North Kansas City School District is now one of my majors. He's been with us for 31 years.
Yeah.
For his birthday last year, one of his former students from like 25 years ago gifted him something. They have remained connected over the years. And there are countless stories. Well, shoot, a big one that just happened a couple years ago. There was a student who climbed up the Worlds of Fun water tower, and was threatening to jump die by suicide.
Oh, wow.
And he asked for his school resource deputy.
Yeah.
Deputy Bransfield showed up, talked him down.
I'm going to cry.
Saved a kid's life.
And that's the connections that community brings.
Yes.
And that's what I feel like part of your leadership is part of those connections. Just to circle back in terms of the crisis intervention team. So you talked about de-escalation. You talked about, just showing up, and even if you have to put them in cuffs, doing it in a way that's respectful.
Yes.
But also there is someone that helps you or is in part of this program, Lola.
Yes.
You get giddy. I love how giddy you get. Tell us about Lola.
So Lola is our, for the lack of trying to use big words to explain what she is our emotional support dog.
Yeah.
But she is much more than an emotional support dog. She goes to critical incidents with her handler, who's our communications supervisor. And, she's there for kids, she's there for victims. But aside from critical incidents, she goes around our office. She goes around to other police departments, fire departments, businesses. I mean, whoever wants to have Lola come by.
Yeah.
She has her own book. An author literally wrote a book for Lola, and it's called Positively Lola. And it's great. It's, all the proceeds from that book go to HALO, which is a nonprofit organization that members of the Clay County Sheriff's Office have created themselves. It's not under my purview.
Right.
I try to separate myself from it, but I support it.
Yeah.
And it's called, the acronym is Helping All Live Optimally. But Lola, funny story. So my brother-in-law lives in Naples, Florida. And Lola was on TV down there, and he takes a screenshot of it and sends me the text with the screenshot. And he goes, "Is this your Lola?" And I was like, "What? In Naples, Florida?" Yeah, so Lola's kind of famous.
That is awesome.
And I'll try to find that picture to get to you so you can add it in, in this episode.
That is awesome. So Lola's doing amazing work.
Yes.
Okay, so one of my, I keep talking about all my favorite things about you. So just to brag on you, so you have a doctorate.
I do.
And your doctorate is in?
It's a Doctor of Education with an emphasis in ethical leadership.
Okay, which I believe that you take to the heart. 100%.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
In fact, when I was looking for a program, which I spent almost 2.5 years trying to find the program that was that I felt most connected to, and I saw ethical leadership. At the time I was teaching at Mid-America Nazarene University, and we had a partnership with Olivet Nazarene University, and I saw in our handbook because you and I worked for MNU.
That's another area where our lives just cross. But anyway, we'll get to that in a minute.
So I'm reading this and I'm like, ethical leadership, and I thought to myself, I'm like, isn't leadership supposed to be ethical? Well, yeah, it's supposed to be, but when you talk about leadership and how charisma goes into leadership and backgrounds. I mean, you start talking about transformational leadership like Gandhi and Mother Teresa, servant leadership and stuff like that, M.A.R.C.H Jr. And then on the flip side of that coin, you learn about pseudo-transformational leadership like, Hitler and Mao Zedong and Kim Jong-un and like all these other world leaders who have just been amazingly awful.
Yeah.
And so that's when it kind of came together for me. But it was a 3-year program. Super intensive. I always caution people when they consider going to get a doctorate. My first question is why. Like, why are you doing this? Like, because if you don't have a why and you think, it's just because I want to finish my education, I'm like, you're going to have a hard time. Because I remember, for 3 years, I was almost non-existent in my family's life. I had a great team at work who really carried me through. But the hardest part wasn't the studies. It was being in the bedroom, the office, and hearing my family in the living room laughing and watching TV and just being together, and I couldn't be out there. It was awful. But I'm glad because, I have a doctorate, but I'm also a high school dropout.
Yes. So this is another reason why we all love Will. Tell us, and I don't want you to have to relive any horrible experiences, but tell us a little bit about your childhood and why. I think this is partly why people connect with you. Tell us about some of that.
So to make a long story short, because I'm literally writing a book about my childhood and adult life, but my father left when I was 3. Left my mom and my brother and I. My brother has a cognitive disability, so now we have a single mother trying to care for 2 kids by herself in California. And my brother has a cognitive disability, so it's extremely hard. And plus, I was not a good kid. Okay. By the time I was 8 years old, we ended up being homeless. And the best that I can remember is we were homeless for about 2 years. We were living in the back of our station wagon. And, for that 2-year period, though, it was much like it was like camping every night. We woke up every morning, we went to McDonald's and ate an Egg McMuffin, and we went to school. for lunch, we would eat whatever our friends would give us, out of their lunch bag or, their lunch box or something like that. But then for years, probably almost 40 years, I forgot about what we did for dinner. And it wasn't until a reporter who was interviewing my brother and I, because my brother used to work for the sheriff's office. Yeah. I didn't hire him because that's nepotism. That's against the law, but he worked for the previous sheriff. She asked my brother, hey, your brother, me, talked about breakfast and lunch, but what'd you guys do for dinner? And I was like, for a second, I was like, what did we do for dinner? And my brother goes, oh man, we used to go dumpster diving behind grocery stores. Oh, wow. And like 40 years of memories that I blocked out of my mind come flooding back into my brain. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I just remember my heart racing, my anxiety increasing, because I remember as a kid that I felt like we were doing something wrong every night. And it was just a matter of waiting for the cops to show up. Because when I was growing up, cops weren't our friends. Yeah. Like, I didn't grow up with officer friendly. In the neighborhoods that I grew up in, it was when the cops showed up, you ran. Because if you weren't doing something bad, then you were going to be the snitch if you were seen talking to the cops. Yeah. And so, man, got through that. Moved closer to my grandparents, but I was 16 years old when I dropped out of high school. Yeah. I thought it was more important to work to help support my mom and my brother than it was to get an education. Well, I was going nowhere real fast, and I was working 3 jobs, and I was 18 years old when a friend of mine, kind of like in the same friend group, I didn't really like him because he picked on me. Believe it or not, I was the runt of my friend group. In fact, I'm like 245 right now, and I'm like 5'11", but these guys were all 6 foot and much bigger than I was. But he shot a guy to steal his motorcycle. And we all know what guilty by association means. And when that happened, I just thought to myself, I was like, what am I doing? Yeah. Like, I'm going nowhere. Yeah. And I could have been there when that happened. Yeah. So I got my GED and I joined the Army.
Okay. So that was the start of another journey.
Yes.
Which led you into the military.
So I went to the military, and I will always say forever that the military saved my life. Yeah. It gave me the structure I needed. Yeah. I mean, I was a hardworking kid, but I didn't know what being responsible was all about. Like, I grew up without a father. I mean, I had one parent's father one of my friend's parent, his dad, was probably the closest thing to a father figure I ever had. And I learned a lot of lessons from him, lessons that I still carry with me today. So I'm very grateful for him. But the Army is what saved my life, But when I went in, I was such a reckless person, the Army gave me the confidence that I've never had. It gave me structure. I was good at being in the Army, but I was a parachute rigger when I was enlisted. So everything airborne I attempted. I skydived. I jumped out of airplanes. I was a jump master. I was a pathfinder. And so anything that was high risk, I was all about it. But then, when I turned, I think it was 23, an opportunity came up because I did go back to college. Not because I wanted to. It was because the 9 of us that went from training to our first duty station, we were all talking about fast tracking and getting promoted really fast and doing everything we had to. And I was like, yeah. And then they started talking about college, and I was like, yeah, what? I was like, I gotta go back to school to get promoted? This is bullshit. So out of all 9 of us, I was the only one to graduate with an associate's degree. Wow. And it was in behavioral science through Georgia Military College. But that allowed me to put my flight packet in, and I got accepted to flight school. So I ended up being a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter pilot. Oh my gosh. Wow. I was like 25 years old in charge of a multi-million-dollar aircraft, and I thought I was good, but let me tell you, I was a rookie through and through. I only had like 4 years of flight experience. But, I say a rookie, but I was doing some pretty amazing things. I mean, I was fighting fires in South Korea with a Bambi bucket. I mean, we started the fires, but somebody had to put them out at the artillery ranges. But, flying at treetop level at like 100 miles an hour, watching the tree branches, slap our chin bubble and stuff. So even though we were rookies, I mean, you're really a rookie until you get some significant flight hours under your belt. And this was prior to the U.S. getting involved in Afghanistan and Iraq. But when I was 26 years old, they diagnosed me with adult onset asthma, and they permanently grounded me and told me that I had to find a new job. So basically, they were ending my military career. I was devastated.
I've never heard this story. This one's new.
Oh man.
Okay. All right.
I was angry for 8 years.
Oh,
Like
wow.
I carried so much anger and rage in my
Yeah.
core because they ended my military career based off a theory. Now, I don't want to find out if that theory, I don't want to be the one, didn't want to be the one that made that theory come true because it was pretty scary. It had to do with your lungs and ascents and at altitude and stuff like that.
Okay.
I lost, I think, 5 friends in the first year because we were getting ready to deploy to either Afghanistan or Iraq to serve aviation services support. And I lost 5 friends that first year. And, for years I thought, man, if I was there, I would have made a difference. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, reality is if I was there, I might have been one of them. It was mid-air collisions and small arms fire and crashes and stuff like that. So I was pretty angry, but that's what led me into law enforcement. I had mentioned a little while ago that cops weren't our friends when I was growing up. So now I'm 26, about to be 27 years old, and with a family, and I had to support them somehow. And with my ego being what it was and being pissed off because I had to get out of the military, jobs would pop up, and I'm like, I'm too good for that. Well, I needed a job pretty quick because the deadline was coming up, and Phoenix Police Department in Arizona was hiring. And I thought to myself, I was like, I have to be a cop? This is bullshit. I was like, because in my mind, like, I didn't hate cops. I didn't.
Yeah, your view of them was not. Yeah.
So I started with the Phoenix Police Department, and I'm not going to say every day over the last 22 years has been amazing.
Yeah.
I have had some pretty shitty days. I don't know if I can say
yes,
that.
You can say
I've been kind of lowering my voice as I'm saying things, but 22 years, I can reflect and think about the countless number of people I have helped personally.
Yeah.
And that, oh my gosh, man, how many occupations are out there that you help people and not just help people like loaning $20 or something like that, but literally be the difference between life and death of another person.
Yeah. Well, and just to piggyback on you helping people, so I've had, lots of ideas over the years in terms of how I can support our community or just various things. And you've always been so supportive of me. And I just want to say thank you for that.
It's my pleasure.
I
You're an awesome person.
Oh, but, and I just, when I would have an idea, you would show up to support it, or you would give money towards it, or you would do something to support it. And I've always recognized those efforts, and I just know that you are a good person at your core, and that always makes me proud, like being your friend. The other day when I was inviting Will to be on the show, I texted him and I was like, hey, just give me a call when you get a minute. It's not even like 30 minutes later, I see the front door open at the office. I'm like, there's Will. I go, oh, you got the bat signal. I was like, what? I just thought you'd maybe reply through text. I said, hey, I need to talk to you. He's like, is everything okay? What's going on? I'm like, oh, I just want you to be on my podcast. He's like, oh, okay. Yeah, we could do that. But the concern was, because I said, we got to keep it, limited amount of time. And he's like, well, last one I was on was 5 hours long. And I was like, we could probably fill up 5 hours.
Oh, easily.
But I was like, no, this is not a 5 hour podcast, Will. We're not going to be doing that. But so Will's office, just to kind of put this in perspective, what are you, like a block?
Not even a block.
Not even a
we're
block.
Probably talking 50 feet.
Okay, all right. So then just to kind of talk about the police department though too, like the police are over here and the sheriff's department is here, and then we have our courthouse, which is diagonal from, so we're all like, there's this big hub, and and our office is obviously just like right there. So Will walks past our office all the time, and he was in a meeting up at our county building, and so he just walked by and came right down in, and it's like, yeah, I'll help you out. And that's just how Will is though. Like, it's not just me, okay? I just want everybody to know, like, he's just like that with everyone. You put out the bat signal, and he shows up, and he's there to help you, and I think that's a fun thing about you.
Thank you for those kind words. That is just me, though.
It is you.
And when, I get all the time, because I tell people, I'm like, if you want to reach out to me directly,
Yeah.
hit me up on a DM.
Yeah.
Don't call me, because if your number shows up as unknown or a number that's not programmed in my phone, I will not answer it,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of people out there that, we'll just leave it at that. But, I don't know how many times let's just say the last 4 years as sheriff, someone will hit me up on a direct message on Facebook Messenger or Instagram, and I'll respond to them. They're just like, "Oh my God, you responded!"
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
And I'm like going back to the difference between a police department and a sheriff's office is, I work for the people.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's my responsibility to respond to you. Now, sometimes I get really busy. Sometimes it might be 3 or 4 days, but I always try to get back to people. And for those of you that are watching and I have not gotten back to you, I want to apologize. Sometimes I get really busy and it escapes my mind because I'm on to the next million things that I have to do.
I know. Sometimes I get a text message and I read it, but I'm in the middle of something and then it's gone. And then it'll be like a little bit later. I'm like, I don't think I ever responded to that. We have so many ways that people can reach us nowadays. It's overwhelming.
It is.
And so I think it is. It's hard to keep up with all that's happening.
Plus, I have to be mindful, and I was not very good at this in the beginning, but I have to be mindful about my time with my family, with my wife.
Yeah.
And it's not fair to them when I'm constantly on my phone talking to people like literally that I don't even know, but they still reached out to me. And it's usually because they need help.
Yeah.
And I tell you, like, helping others is really easy for me, and I think that's why I'm always trying to help others. Yeah. But it can also be very demanding of my time, and I have to be fair with my family too.
Yeah. Well, and also just demanding and draining of your your resources.
I only have so much bandwidth. Like, sometimes I have to get away.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So one of the connections that Will and I have is that, I did a talk on trauma. I do a lot of trainings on trauma. That's sort of my thing. And then Will and I'm very open about my mental health issues, my trauma journey. And that was one of the things that Will and I talked about on our flight from Denver to Kansas City was mental health, and how as a law enforcement officer or sheriff, that it's very important for Will to be transparent about mental health issues and make sure that everyone is taken care of. And one of the things that Will has been working on for himself is your mental health, from the trauma of your childhood to Afghanistan, which we didn't even talk about. You have how many tours in Afghanistan? So
I was a civilian contractor, so it's contracts.
Okay.
Tours are really like a reference to military being over there.
People. Okay.
And I'm always I'm careful by saying like, hey, look, I wasn't in the military when I was over there. I wanted to be over there in the military, but I was over there as a civilian contractor. Okay. So I had 3 contracts over there. So 1-year contracts for a total of 3 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, it is. I was ready to come home.
And then just your life in general. And then at some point you realized I probably should get some help tell us a little bit about that.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't have to go too deep into it.
And I appreciate this question. And the reason why I appreciate it so much is because I feel, again, as a law enforcement leader, that it is up to us to set the example for law enforcement across the board. And I'm talking about we'll say 750,000 of us, from local to federal. Yeah. Because we are constantly exposed to traumatic incidents, sometimes on a daily basis. And I don't know what the statistics are, but statistically speaking, I believe that most people only experience a traumatic event like maybe once, twice in their lifetime, whereas we experience once, twice in a day for an entire career. So my journey was a journey that I really kept to myself, and it was a journey that I was very reluctant to identify that it was actually a journey. Yeah. But I've been going to my therapist now for almost 7 years. Yeah. And she's amazing. And it was funny because when I first started seeing her, she was an intern at the place that she was working at. But she brought to my attention, she wanted to interview me because I was the emergency management director. And she wanted to know, like, it was about trauma and natural disaster response, and for an emergency management director and anybody that works in emergency management, how do we manage that? How do we navigate that? So she wrote, I think it was her thesis on that, and I was one of the people that I was fortunate to be interviewed. Well, she offered me, because I was talking, and she's like, you'd be a great candidate for neurofeedback therapy. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Really, just believe me, I'm good. Which, that's like a clear indicator that, you really probably should go, talk with someone.